Okay, I'm just going to go through some of the default settings that I like to change. These are the camera defaults. AF frame, this will automatically focus on faces instead of whatever's in the center. I like to have a little more control, so I actually pick center. This is the size of the area that it'll try to focus on. I leave it at normal. I like to turn off digital zoom. It's the same as zooming in software, and software tends to do it better than the camera anyway, so turn that off because it doesn't really buy you anything. AF point zoom, this will magnify the area that is in focus, so you can see a little bit better if it's actually in focus or not. I like to turn that on. AF assist beam, I'll leave that on, although if you're trying to take a picture of someone without them noticing, you might want to turn that off. Flash settings, I like to turn red eye correction on. It tends to do a pretty good job actually inside the camera. And red eye lamp, I will leave that on. That will make a little light come on that makes the pupils dilate so the red eye is smaller. This tells you down here that you press menu to go back. Eye contrast, which is intelligent contrast. The camera does a pretty good job, so I'll leave that set to auto. Review duration, 2 seconds isn't long enough, especially if you want to show someone else, so I make it 6 seconds. Review info, focus check will let you, it'll, like when you play back the image, it'll automatically zoom in to the area that was focused. Detailed will give you a whole bunch of information about the shutter and ISO and all that stuff that was used. I like to leave it check on focus check. Display overlay, I like grid lines. Grid lines help you compose the image, maintain rule of thirds, and they also help you keep the horizon level. Image stabilization mode, I do shoot only, which will help conserve the battery a little bit. Date time stamp off. Since it's a computer, the timestamp will be on the file name anyways. That's all those. I like to turn mute on because I don't like to hear every single button that I press. Brightness is fine. Startup image, turn that off. Just like make a cleaner boot. File numbering, continuous. That way it doesn't start over. This will create a new folder every month, so all of your pictures will automatically be grouped by month in subfolders. Lens retract 1 minute. That's if you're not doing anything. The lens will retract, which is fine. Power saving, auto power down on, display off after 1 minute. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Date time, it's pretty self-explanatory. Video system, NTSC is America, PAL is Europe. That's if you plug the camera into the TV. Language English, and that's all the menu functions. Okay, for the most part people will probably be using the camera in automatic mode. There aren't many settings you can choose in automatic mode. You can't adjust the exposure, you can't choose macro, but you can turn the flash on or auto. Down at the bottom you see it says menu for settings, so we hit menu and it jumps you to the flash settings. Those are the same ones that are in the menu. So you can turn the flash on or off, or actually you can turn it to auto or off. If it's set to auto, it won't necessarily fire if it's bright enough. You can also choose a self timer, 10 second, 2 second, or custom. The custom self timer lets you pick how many seconds and then how many pictures it takes after that duration. So like say you want to get at least 3 pictures, you can do that. I'm going to go through the different programmable modes there are. So go to Programmable Auto. Defaults to P, which means Programmable Auto. Up and down we'll choose the left menu. Left and right we'll choose the bottom menu. The first is what kind of programmable mode we want to be in. P lets us set all of the values on the left. If we go to the right from P, we get portrait mode. That will soften skin tones, make the picture a little bit blurry so you don't see your pores and things like that quite as easily. You'll notice everything else gets grayed out, so I can only set the image size. Can't set ISO or any of that. Night Snapshot will let you take a picture at night without a tripod. I mean, you'll probably still want a tripod, but image stabilization should help enough. It'll limit the camera to a 1/8 second exposure, and it'll use the flash, and it'll turn the ISO up to 250. Kids and Pets will increase the ISO to try and increase the shutter speed. Indoor will set the white balance for incandescent, and it'll also increase the ISO so that you can get pictures without a lot of motion blur. The last button here is programmable. The options are, you have to hit display to see the rest of them. So the options are face self-timer. What this does is when you take a picture, the camera will wait until it detects an additional face. So if you're taking a group shot, you focus on the group, press the button to take the picture, and then when it detects one more face show up, it'll start a 2-second countdown. If there's nobody there, it'll start the 2-second countdown when a face shows up. Low light will increase the ISO to 1600, but reduce your resolution to 2 megapixels. This does actually work better than the camera's native ISO 1600 setting. So if you take a picture with this setting versus programmable mode and just force it to 1600, even if you reduce the resolution of that 12 megapixel picture down to this 2 megapixel one, the one that the camera does is better. So I would use that if you can't use the flash, or the flash isn't powerful enough and you need more light. Beach is for very bright scenes with a lot of contrast. Underwater is for the color distortion that you get underwater. Foliage brings out greens to make them pop out even more. Snow is similar to beach. It's for high contrast, very bright images. Fireworks is a 2-second exposure with a neutral density filter added. It like pops down inside the camera, a little dark lens that makes it so the fireworks aren't overexposed. Brings the camera up to equivalent of an f8 at wide angle. And long shutter is a programmable long shutter where you can specify anywhere from 1 to 15-second exposure at any ISO you like. Now if we go back to our P, so I can walk you through the left side of the menu. You can choose ISO here, let it be auto, 80 all the way up to 1600. As it goes higher, you're going to get more and more noise in the picture, but you'll need less and less light and be less susceptible for motion blur. Of course, your image stabilization does nothing for a target who's moving, so there's auto white balance, which I found to be fairly accurate. Daylight, cloudy, tungsten lights, fluorescent lights, and custom. Basically on custom you can point it to a white or gray target and it'll measure the white balance. You can save your own colors, so if you've got certain scenarios where you always need to change the tint a little bit to get it to look right, this is where you can do that. And then you've got the camera built-in ones, which as you saw are vivid, neutral, sepia, black and white, but all that stuff you can do in Photoshop after the fact, so I just leave it turned off. You've got your metering mode. Evaluative will use the entire display to figure out what a proper exposure is, trying to not blow out it, trying to not overexpose anything on the screen. Center weighted will focus more on objects in the center and will care less about items that are on the edge of the screen. And spot will focus exclusively on the center and doesn't care about the rest of the items if they're over or underexposed. Evaluative is always the best for everyday Here you can choose single shot or continuous shot. Continuous shot on this particular camera is only one shot every 0.9 seconds, but that's a little bit faster than you can do it by hand. So it's there. I leave it set to continuous. I mean single. And size. The default's 12 megapixels. I leave it set to 12 megapixels at normal quality. Display lets you change quality in this menu. So there's large, normal, fine, or fine and normal. Fine is the highest quality, so I'll leave that. And those are all those menus. These are the buttons that you have without having to go into the menu. You can adjust your exposure by 2 stops up or 2 stops down. If the picture you're taking is constantly overexposed or underexposed, you can override it a little bit that way. You can also, if you had a tripod, do a 4-stop HDR by taking a picture at -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. I'm going to leave it set to 0. Hit up arrow to get rid of it. To the left you've got macro, normal, and infinity. Infinity will keep the camera focused near infinity, although it does still autofocus to some extent. Normal is, of course, everyday use. Macro will let you zoom in just a little bit. Actually, it'll let you have the camera just a little bit closer than you normally would. I've found the optimal macro setting on this is as wide angle as you can get, and then the camera like about 1 centimeter away from the target. Each camera could be different. And then I'll set that back to normal. Go down is the self-timer mode. Off 10 seconds, 2 seconds. 2 seconds is basically so that if the camera's on the tripod, you can press the button, it'll wait 2 seconds for the tripod to stop vibrating or shaking or whatever, and then take the picture. And you can go to custom, hit menu for more settings. Oops, I didn't hit it in time. Custom menu. You can set how long the delay is, up to 30 seconds, and you can set how many pictures it takes after that time. 10 seconds is what or 10 shots is what I have for now. Set is okay. And to the right is your flash mode. You have auto, which will fire when it needs to, and in no other scenarios. Always on. Slow synchro, which will take a picture and then, or take a picture with a flash and then wait for the background to be properly exposed. And then flash off, of course. If you hit menu for settings, it just goes to the red eye settings. I'm going to turn my self-timer off. And those are all the settings. You have to remember that the face self-timer is not with this self-timer. The face self-timer is a programmable mode. You have to go into P, and it's in the right, and if it's not there you have to hit display to see the rest of them. And that's that.